now being recorded.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to call the zoning administrator meeting of June 18th. At this time, I would like to call the zoning administrator meeting of June 18th, 2025 to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. I would like to remind all audience members and participants in today's meeting to kindly silence your cell phones to avoid interruptions in today's meeting. I'd like to begin with public comments on non-agenda or non-public hearing items. Secretary, does anyone wish to speak on any non-public hearing item?
If you are attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on non-agenda or non-public hearing items, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it into the secretary. I'll wait for a few seconds. Zoning administrator, we don't have anyone that would like to comment on non-agenda or non-public hearing items.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar, there are no items for consideration on today's agenda. That concludes the consent calendar, and we'll move on to the business calendar section. I will now review the process for the public hearing so that everyone knows what to expect. Staff will provide a brief verbal presentation and answer questions of the zoning administrator. Once this portion is complete, the public hearing will be opened. The public hearing portion allows the applicant and members of the audience to speak on specific items. The applicant will be given the opportunity to speak, limited to 15 minutes. Members of the public, if anyone joins, will be given the opportunity to comment, limited to 3 minutes. The applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to comments made by the public, limited to 5 minutes. At that time, the public hearing will be closed. Discussion will return to the zoning administrator with formal action taken to approve, deny, or continue review of the application. When organizing your comments, please consider the following suggestions. First, please state your name and address, which is voluntary. State whether you support, oppose, or are neutral to the proposal. Your statement should include all pertinent facts within your knowledge. Please note, decisions on these matters are final unless appealed within 10 days by any interested party or individual pursuant to provisions afforded by Chapter 41 of the Santa Ana Municipal Code. This is the time and place for item number 1, minor exceptions number 2025-01 and 2025-02 for the property located at 1200 North Tustin Avenue, located within the professional zoning district. At this time, I'd like to state that I have nothing to disclose for this item. Senior Planner Jerry Guevara will now provide a brief verbal presentation.
Good morning, Zoning Administrator. This item is a request for 2 minor exceptions by the Orange County Employees Retirement System to facilitate the construction of a 3-story, 65,768 square foot office building to serve as their new headquarters at 1200 North Tustin Avenue. Specifically, the applicant is requesting approval of minor exception number 2025-01 to allow a building height increase from 35 feet to 43 feet and 9 inches, as allowed by Section 41-632-3D of the Santa Ana Municipal Code, and minor exception number 2025-02 to allow a reduction in required number of parking spaces from 197 stalls to 160 stalls, as allowed per Section 41-632-3G of the Santa Ana Municipal Code. The project site is located at the northwest corner of Tustin Avenue and Wellington Avenue and is surrounded by offices and commercial uses. The site is located within the professional zoning district and has the general plan land use destination of professional and administrative office. Staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request due to the project's compliance with the intent of the professional zoning district of providing high quality office development and compliance with the vision of the general plan. Moreover, Special circumstances exist that make it difficult for the site to comply with the current development standards, which warrant approval of the applicant's request in order to preserve preservation and enjoyment of property rights. The project site exhibits special circumstances related to its location and surroundings. The site is within an established office corridor, and strict compliance of the municipal code of 35-foot maximum height will prevent the development of a modern, efficient office building with appropriate clear height in order to accommodate mechanical equipment. This restriction would deprive the property of a development privilege commonly offered to similar situated parcels within the professional zoning district and the surrounding urban context. In addition, the new building will serve as Oster's headquarters, as mentioned, and will accommodate approximately 121 employees, but will also provide a boardroom for Oster's board members to host their board meetings. Based on the city's parking ratio and the determination that this use classifies as the office, the project requires a total of 197 parking spaces. However, this ratio does not consider differences in time of primary uses and secondary uses, for which is why the applicant is seeking approval of minor exception 2025-02. The proposed building features secondary as well as ancillary uses that would not be operating simultaneously, and we also do not double count occupancies for these secondary uses. This includes a 3,000 square foot boardroom, as mentioned, as well as additional office and break rooms, a cafe on the second floor, as well as a wellness center. These amenities are critical for the operation of Oster's to be able to provide amenities that are now being required for these modern offices. The project proposes 160 parking spaces, which is more than sufficient for Oster's as provided by technical studies by the applicant. Of the 160 parking spaces, 107 parking spaces will be allocated to its employees, which include full-time and part-time employees. The project will also provide guest parking spaces for a total of 46 parking spaces. In addition to that, the project does also include bicycle parking spaces and is in close proximity to other means of transportation. Approval of these minor exceptions are consistent with and support several goals and policies of the general plan. The professional and administrative office medium land use destination of the general plan supports the permitting of variety of office and related uses in this area, and is consistent with goal 1 of the land use element, which encourages a balance of land uses that meet the Santa Ana's diverse needs. Specifically, the project is consistent with policy LU 2.1 that encourages a broad spectrum of land uses and development that offer employment opportunities for current and future residents of the city of Santa Ana. Pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act and the CEQA guidelines, the project has been determined to be exempt pursuant to Section 15302, Class 2 of the CEQA guidelines, and a notice of exemption will be filed for this project. Based on the information provided today, as well as the staff report and technical documents, staff is recommending that the zoning administrator adopt a resolution approving minor exception 2025-01 as condition, as well as adopt a resolution approving minor exception number 2025-02 as condition. This concludes staff presentation. I'm available to answer any of your questions, and the applicant and their team is also available for any questions.
Thank you for that report. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. Would the applicant like to speak on this matter?
Hi, good morning. My name is Selena Kelleher. I'm with EPD Solutions, and we are representing the Orange County Employee Retirement System entity known as OSERS. I'd like to thank staff so much for their time and diligence in getting us here before you today, zoning administrator, in review of the plans and working with the other outside departments. We are respectfully asking for the zoning administrator's approval on the height minor modification for increase in height and the minor modification for the reduction in parking. OSERS is currently located at the site just west of this project site before you on Wellington in the office building there. And reaching this milestone to get to the zoning administrator is a major part in their process in bringing their new headquarters to the city, where they're excited to bring a new place for their employees and the retirees of Orange County in which they serve. That will be a new a modern facility with amenities for employees and a place for long-term placemaking within the city.
Thank you.
I'm here with the OSERs themselves and our architect if you have any questions, and happy to answer any questions that you may have of us.
Very good. Thank you. I do have a few questions. First of all, I would like to understand the hours of the office building as compared to the hours for a typical board meeting.
Sure. The office building hours are typical of any workplace, so generally from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. About 80% of their employees also work remotely on Mondays and Fridays. And then the boardroom operations are typically on Tuesdays of the month, and the schedule varies. And the meetings they're generally in the morning time, anywhere from about 10 to 12, depending on the agenda, similar to a council meeting, where a lot of the staff that works within the side of the building goes into the chambers like we are here today to host their meeting. I've been to the meetings there, and they are open also to via Zoom to the public.
Thank you for that. I'd like to note that parking is a major concern that's raised consistently among community members, particularly in residential neighborhoods, which are proximate to this specific site. And so I would like to make sure that this parking management plan, a part of the conditions of approval, is thoughtfully considered and approved. And so I'd like to understand any strategies that you've considered for components of that parking management plan.
For the parking management plan, we will submit that to staff for review and open to input in regards to managing parking. They are on site with operators, like the President Brenda here herself is on site for able to take any public comments and address them before they get to the city level. Additionally, there's flexibility in asking to have some employees work from home on days, should there be a large board meeting that's going to be happening in order to prevent any overflow parking concerns to occur. Additionally, there's flexibility in scheduling those board meetings in relation to time or what may be on the agenda to make sure they don't have a very heavy agenda where it would be largely attended.
And then I have a minor question. One of the ancillary uses is the wellness center. Is that primarily for employees, or is that for external people as well?
It would be just for the employees.
Employees, thank you. That concludes all of the questions that I have for the applicant. Recording secretary, have we received any written communication, or is there a member of the public that would like to comment on this item?
Zoning Administrator, we received one public comment after the deadline via email in opposition to item 1. If you are attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on this item, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it into the secretary. I'll wait a few seconds. Zoning Administrator, we don't have anyone that would like to comment on this item.
Thank you, recording secretary. At this time, I would like to ask the applicant if they have any additional comments from others who represent the applicant. None? Thank you. I will go ahead and close the public hearing. At this time, I'd like to ask a few questions of staff. First of all, as I noted earlier, parking is a major concern for residents in single-family neighborhoods throughout the city. And I'd like to understand, with respect to the other applications that have been approved for exceptions, was the basis similar to the basis for this specific application?
Zoning Administrator, yes, that is correct. The analysis and the basis for the recommendations consistent with past practices.
Thank you. Would you also please explain the city's intent with the exception to allow shared parking for multiple uses on site?
Yes, so this application is kind of unique since OSERS is kind of an extension of a government entity. So Our parking code does not currently have a differentiate between government uses and offices, and the staff determined that the closest parking ratio to analyze this project was based on office. So similar to other projects, we don't penalize uses or occupancies that are going to be occupied by various employees at different various times. So we don't double count parking situations, very similar to like a gymnasium, or a church. We typically just analyze the areas that are going to be mostly heavily occupied, and we try to kind of credit for those ancillary uses that are not going to be occupied concurrently by different employees. So that was more or less the rationale for the support of this application to determine the various shared uses that is being proposed.
Thank you for that explanation. I'd also like to ask of you any strategies that have been contemplated to be incorporated into the parking management plan?
Yes, as I mentioned, because this is a unique use, we are going to be working closely with the applicant to ensure that the parking management plans addresses any mitigation measures in the event that parking becomes an issue. In particular, concerns of staff is any overflow parking that may impact the residential streets that are in close proximity to the project site. So similar to other uses or other development, we will ensure that there is a plan to either offload parking from the street by creating additional tandem parking spaces on site, or valet services. As mentioned by the applicant, because this is also, like I mentioned, a unique use, we do want to make sure we have those conversations with the applicant early in the process, while they're going through the permitting process, to ensure we're capturing different scenarios that could play out.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate that the applicant is willing to consider modifying hours of work on site and allowing employees to work from home on days when you might have a high impact in the boardroom. I also would like to note that the staff just mentioned the importance of working together early in the process on the parking management plan. And for that reason, when I reviewed the conditions of approval for minor exception number 2025-02, I noted that the condition of approval regarding the parking management plan was to be submitted prior to issuance of building permit. And I would like to go ahead and amend that condition to read, prior to submittal into building plan check, a parking management plan must be submitted to the Planning Division for review and approval. The PMP shall address measures on how to address parking deficiencies and impacts to the neighborhood should any arise. So just to be clear, we want to make sure that the submittal of the draft parking management plan is made prior to building plan check submittal. So at this time, I'd like to move ahead and take action on these items. Yes, I was planning to. Yeah. And before I do that, thank you, Ali. I'd like to make sure that the applicant is comfortable with that modification to condition of approval number 7 for minor exception number 2025-02.
Yes, we'll accept that change.
Thank you. So based on the information provided by staff and the applicant, I hereby adopt a resolution approving minor exception number 2025-01 regarding a building height increase as conditioned. And I hereby adopt resolution approving minor exception number 2025-02 regarding off-street parking reduction as with the conditions as amended. That concludes the business calendar for today's zoning administrator meeting. At this time, I'd like to move on to closing comments. Are there any comments from staff? All right, hearing none. I have no final remarks except to say that I think it's a very nice project and appreciate what you're bringing or what you're adding to the city of Santa Ana. At that point, the meeting is now concluded.